Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video I'm doing a comparison of the LG G Watch R up against the LG G Watch. Now, for the sake of avoiding confusion, I'll be referring to the LG G Watch R simply as the Watch R and the LG G Watch simply as the G Watch. And on first glance, the most noticeable difference between the two is that the Watch R has a circular display, whereas the G Watch has a square display. Now, you'll notice that the G Watch does not have a physical button, whereas the Watch R does. And it serves one of three purposes depending on how you use it. Simply pressing the button will turn the screen on, pressing and holding it for just a few seconds will bring up the system settings menu, and pressing and holding it for a bit longer will either turn off the device or turn it on. Now, the straps can be changed on either watch with pretty much any standard strap you can find in a store. Now, do keep in mind that the strap that comes with the Watch R is rather stiff. Even with some daily use and wear and tear, it still remains relatively stiff, whereas the one on the G Watch is really loose, a lot more easy to put on and take off. Now, both watches are very comfortable to wear. They're pretty equal in terms of comfort. And in terms of just general appearance, the Watch R has the advantage because it can look somewhat casual depending on which watch face you pick, or it can look very stylish. It can pretty much suit any type of occasion. Whereas the G Watch doesn't look terrible to say, but it has more of a casual look. Even with the more fancier type of watch face displayed on, it still looks a bit more casual compared to the Watch R. Now, turning the screen on is easier on the Watch R than it is on the G Watch. You see, you can just simply bring up your wrist like you would with a normal watch and the screen will turn on, or you can tap the button on the side to display the screen, or you can simply just tap the screen itself, the touch screen, and the screen will display. Now, of course, the G Watch doesn't have a physical button. You can raise your wrist to display it, but you have to turn your wrist a lot more at a very uncomfortable angle. It doesn't feel very natural either. And of course, it has the same option of simply touching the screen to turn the watch on. Now, in terms of screens, the Watch R has a 1.3-inch p-oled screen with a resolution of 320 by 320, whereas the G Watch has the bigger screen. It's a 1.65-inch IPS LCD display with a resolution of 280 by 280. Now, do keep in mind, in terms of setting the brightness level, the G Watch can get brighter than the Watch R. However, if you set the decent amount of brightness level on both watches, they both handle pretty well in sunlight or indoor lighting, so looking at the screen isn't a problem even with bright lighting surrounding you. In terms of color pop, both watches are pretty good, although I find that the Watch R to have better color pop. Not only that, the Watch R has the sharper screen. That doesn't mean to say it's hard to read text or numbers on both displays. Both of them are very easy to read the time or just general message notifications, but the Watch R does have the sharper of the two displays. Now, the Watch R has a 410 mAh battery, whereas the G Watch has a 400 mAh battery, and that difference in numbers is very tiny, and the same thing can be said about their general performance. With average use, both watches last approximately 2 days, and in terms of charging, they both have their own docking cradle, which is magnetic, so even if it's on a diagonal surface, there's no fear of the watch falling while it's being charged. Now, for the internal parts, both devices are running 4 gigs of internal storage with no possibility of external storage options. They both have 512 megabytes of RAM, and they both have the same type of processor. It's a Qualcomm Snapdragon 400 processor clocked at 1.2 GHz. Now, in terms of general performance with the Watch R, it's extremely fast and very snappy. In fact, both devices perform equal. The Watch R performs fantastic, and it also has a heart rate sensor, which, like all other Android Wear devices, is very slow to read your heart rate but is fairly accurate, whereas the G Watch does not have a heart rate sensor. So despite the G Watch being a few months old compared to the Watch R, it still performs wicked, and it can actually keep up with the Watch R. Another thing to keep in mind is that there's a ton of watch faces built into both watches. So if you don't want to bother downloading any more from the Google Play Store, both watches have a ridiculous amount of watch faces built inside. And let's not forget that both devices are IP67 certified, which means they're water resistant up to 1 meter for 30 minutes. So to wrap it all up, the G Watch has the major advantage is that it's $70 cheaper than the Watch R, depending on where you live, of course. The other thing to consider is that it has a much easier strap to take off and put on. The drawback, of course, is that no matter which watch face you put on the G Watch, it'll always look like a casual watch no matter what. The other thing to consider is that when you're turning your wrist to look at the time, it doesn't work that well. The sensor isn't designed that well, and you have to turn your wrist a lot, which is very uncomfortable and doesn't feel natural. Generally speaking, both watches have the same responsiveness and performance in terms of speed, which is great. Of course, the Watch R is a much more stylish of the two watches. It can pull off the casual look, or it can look extremely stylish compared to the G Watch, depending on which watch face you choose to use, of course. Not only that, turning on the screen to look at the time or your notifications is a lot easier and feels a lot more natural with the Watch R. The disadvantage, of course, is that the strap on the Watch R is very stiff. Even after wear and tear, it got a little more loose, but I still find the strap on the Watch R very stiff to take off and put on. So overall, they're both great watches in their own way. Whatever one you guys decide to choose is better, be sure to mention in the comment section. With that, I'm just gonna wrap it up, so be sure to check out my Facebook, Google+, Twitter links in the video description. Hit the like button, it does help, subscribe, and thanks for watching.